Okay. Hi, everyone. Today we'll be discussing menstrual equity and looking more into what an obstetrician and gynecologist feels about period poverty and what a organizing nonprofit does to address period poverty in their communities. So my name is Jasmine Spies. I currently sit on the National Youth Advisory Council for Period. And today we will be discussing with Dr. Heather, as well as Lynette and Naya. So if you guys can please introduce yourself.
Hi, I guess I'll start. So I'm Dr. Heather Arabunda. I'm an OBGYN. I'm based in New York City. And I started a social media platform basically to discuss the menstrual cycle, to discuss reproductive health issues, and just make it in a way that is accessible and fun for people of all ages. Because what I notice more than anything is that a lot of the resources that are out there are either way too clinical or too sciencey and people don't understand them, or they're like way too like your friend who was like, yeah, girl, I think you should try this lotion. I think you should try this, apple cider vinegar, whatever the case may be, and it's going to cure everything. So I wanted something that was for everybody that people could understand. So I started earlier this year, and I'm just really excited that it's really been catching on and that I've been able to reach a lot of people with my message.
So hi, I'm Lynette Medley. I'm the founder and CEO of No More Secrets, Mind, Body, Spirit Incorporated. I go by she and her pronouns. And we basically are a sexuality awareness organization.
And I'm Naya, the executive director of No More Secrets, and I also go by she, her pronouns.
And we basically,
mother-daughter trio.
Yeah, mother-daughter trio. And we got into the menstrual equity space because of the deficits in conversations with people, especially communities of color, around the menses as a whole. And also, since we are a sexuality awareness organization, we basically, like you say, have therapists, counseling, persons around sexuality related issues. We were getting abundance of referrals around young people who, as they were say, acting out sexually. And when we unpeeled those layers, we found that some people were engaged in survival sex and just harmful behaviors just because they didn't have access to menstrual supplies, which we thought was horrific and discriminatory and oppressive. I'll keep going. But instead of just saying, hey, this is happening, we created the only feminine hygiene bank in Philadelphia and tri-state area and subsequent delivery service.
Awesome.
Wow, thank you guys so much for sharing the work that you guys do. To start off with, this is specifically for Lynette and Naya. So you've both been on the ground doing grassroots work and organizing. You talk a lot about how survival sex and period poverty is central to your movement. So what are the stigmas that you've seen been associated with menstruation in your community, and how has that affected those menstruators and affected your work more specifically?
Okay, well, I guess we talked about a little bit at the beginning, the stigmas and silence and as I say, the taboo around the menstrual cycle as a whole keeps people in this generational cycle of suffering in silence. It's amazing that—
It keeps them in place and stationary.
Yes, and it's amazing to me that as we started, like you said, peeling back these layers and really dealing with this issue, that in 2020, we're having this conversation about basically providing safe, accessible, free resources of menstrual supplies to underserved populations, and even, as I want to say, normal populations, because when COVID hit, everybody's economic status has shifted. And I just can't believe that 5 years in, we're still doing this work by ourselves and no laws or policies have changed. But I think overall, the question that you're talking about is, why is it impacting our community so much? It's because we're not talking about it. We are the voices that are really articulating their concern is silenced, and it doesn't go anywhere. So we are intentional. Again, as I tell people, I don't have to give a voice to this community. They have a voice. So what we're doing is basically, we're carrying, well, you can see we end in each other's sentences. We're carrying it further than it can ever go. So anytime I can get a mic or anytime I can get a seat at the table, I'll keep talking about the discriminatory nature in which our government operates, in which a female body that menstruates or any other identified body that menstruates does not have access to this. And to me, it's shameful.
Thank you. Just to go off of what you just said, in your opinion, where does the menstrual equity movement fit in the growing social justice movement in the United States? And how does, in your opinion, racial equity also fit into that, given that you both identify as Black women?
Well, I think you have to realize, and now he knows I'm going to go off on this one. So you have to realize the way the social justice construct is that it is not inclusive of the intersectionality of oppressed people. Because remember, we're oppressed because of because of layers. Like, it's not just one layer. You know, it has to do, and I had to write some stuff down because I didn't want to miss any of my stuff that I like to say. Economic, social, racial, environmental, you understand? So all these different layers. So when you're talking about a social justice construct to basically deal with menstrual justice, you first have to realize that this is an issue. You have to realize this is an issue that is happening because of systemic oppression and lack of services, supplies, and policies for these communities. The problem with the way social justice is laid out is basically that it's their fault that this is happening, and that they're asking for something that they shouldn't be asking for, or that they're asking for it because they're not able to attain it. And the reality is you're withholding it from them, and you're using as this catalyst so that they can't reach their full potential.
And the question is, why do they have to ask for it to begin with?
There you go. See that young person.
Why you have to ask for it to begin with?
So that's what it is. So the way we operate is that we don't call it a handout. We call it a hand up, because at the end of the day, this is something that they should have to reach their full potential. But again, this is another way in which society has created a way to keep some communities from going to where they need to go and basically acting like it's their fault. So did I answer all the questions?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about, how social justice plays in, and how it can change is that we realize that this is an issue. It needs to be addressed, and it's not their fault. It's the people who make the decisions, because I have to say this, it's no way that when COVID hit that a group of people can come to a table and add it to flexible spending and not think to add it to Medicaid and Medicare. To me, that's gross negligence. Yes. There, I said it. I got it on tape. Yeah, here we go.
Dr. Irabunda, if you would please, I know that Lynette and Naya covered a lot of areas around racial equity and racial justice and social justice within the menstrual equity space. How do you also feel about where does menstrual equity fit in this growing movement within the United States?
I actually totally agree with what you just said. And that's actually kind of the point that I have as well, is that I think that in the medical space where I'm in, right, I feel that a lot of times it's not even thought of, you know what I mean? Like, people don't even think to ask how our patients get their menstrual products, right? So we focus on someone telling us their period's heavy, they're having issues, they're having pain. But oftentimes what I've noticed is that sometimes when I do a procedure for a patient and they have bleeding afterwards, they ask, can I have another pad? Can I have more of that? And then that makes you think, why do you need more of that? Do you not have enough at home? Are you able to afford this? So it's definitely an issue that is just not even thought of. It's just, in addition to that, another issue that I have too is sometimes I feel like even how people get their medication for periods, right? Like if they have pain, or let's say they need birth control pills or something like that, how are they gonna have the money to have that if they don't have money for pads? So I think that we're addressing a lot of issues in terms of resources and resource management throughout our communities, throughout our country. And that very much plays into social justice, because there's a systemic background to all of it, you know? Not only is it through racial injustice and the lack of giving our communities certain levels of resources, but it's also sexism is a big thing. We have to understand that even if we're talking about, we're not even talking about intersectional feminism, but we're talking about feminism in general, a lot of what we know about the female body, or I should say female body parts, have not really been a forethought in the larger medical literature for until very recently, probably the last 100 years. 100 years, 100 years, considering that women have been here since the beginning of time. People with female body parts have been here since the beginning of time. So if we're wondering kind of where this basis for these injustices we see in terms of menstrual equity, talking about reproductive health, talking about uteruses, talking about ovaries, even talking about obtaining products, we barely scratch the surface of, you know, discussing these issues. We barely become, we're not comfortable discussing these issues, and that's where we need to grow. And that's where this larger talk about social justice and systemic, you know, racism comes into play, because it's not only the female body, it's the BIPOC female body that we have to talk about too, because, you know, there's a lot of things that have been assigned to that body, like, you know, the over-sexualization of, you know, women and things like that that come into all of it. It's such a huge topic that you can go into, but I definitely see how this subject of the menstrual cycle and menses and menstrual equity and reproductive health kind of, like, you know, encompasses all of this.
Yeah, so I actually want to address a few points that you guys talked about of access and affordability. You can't have access without affordability, without availability, and how this impacts low-income households, low-income menstruators the most, of specifically with BIPOC people, of their further marginalization, of that truly impacting their access and affordability for period products. But it also goes a little bit deeper than that with the history of menstrual products as well. The menstrual pad, most people don't know this, was actually created by a Black woman. That her being marginalized as a Black woman, today, we don't know that the menstrual pad was actually created by a Black woman, because she couldn't get the patent to create more and actually sell and profit off of it. It was sold to other companies. Menstruation has this huge stigma. It's a taboo topic, and it perpetuates marginalization of marginalized communities even more. You guys have addressed a lot of challenges and issues that menstruators face within menstrual equity, menstrual injustice. But what do you feel is, I guess, an underlooked area of menstrual injustice that people don't consider? We've already talked about access and affordability. You mentioned birth control. That's something that people don't necessarily consider. Menstruators might need birth control to regulate their period. What are other aspects of period poverty that you think people don't consider as much?
Education about your body. That is one of the biggest issues I think we have in America in general, is that because of the fact that we are so afraid to talk about those parts down there, like how many euphemisms do we have for the, you know, for our body parts that are sexual body parts, right? And so many people that I come in contact with have no idea what ovulation is, that your menstrual cycle is not just that, you know, 2 to 7 day window, or, you know, however long you bleed for, that it's actually part of a larger cycle that goes over the course of about a month. People don't get taught that, and that's, and we're doing everyone a disservice not teaching people that, or teaching people what normal periods are, what abnormal periods are, things like that, because there's so many people that have come to my office that are in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, who've had irregular menstrual cycles their whole lives and are wondering why they haven't been able to get pregnant, or just thought that that's how it is. Maybe their mom had that issue and never thought to tell them that it could be, you know, that it's a problem, you know? And so that's, I think education we are lacking that severely throughout our whole, you know, the whole environment that we're in right now, the whole, like, United States has an issue with teaching sexual reproductive education, but I also believe that specifically in underserved communities, we have even more of that because there's stigmas associated with it as well.
Thank you. To also go off of that, No More Secrets is a community-based organization who puts marginalized communities first, who works for the people, by the people. So in your opinion, how can people create more community in building organizations surrounding menstrual injustice and combating period poverty across marginalized communities more? What do you think is missing from the conversation? What needs to be centered from the conversation? And how can people contribute?
Well, I think one thing is that people who are doing this work need to know the difference between menstrual equity and period poverty.
Yes.
So we address period poverty. Most organizations address menstrual equity. There's a huge difference. And when they interchange the language, people become confused because if you give them a package with 2 tampons and 2 pads, that's addressing menstrual equity. That's the assumption, again, from privilege or just from perspective, that I'm giving you this to get through the day till you can get to your next package, till you can get home, till you can get to your next supply. That's not addressing their whole menstrual cycle. Period poverty is when people do not have access, they will not have access, and they don't have any other resource, and they need monthly supplies. And I think that that's one of the things that we're intentional about talking about. That's why we are the only organization in the nation that gives out over 38,000 products a week. We give a 3 to 5 month supply to every menstruator in the house so that they can reach their full potential, which can be up to 10 people in one household. And I think because they cohabitate because of poverty. So I think sometimes when people are making decisions, people jump on platforms. Period poverty is not a platform, it's a plight. It's something that is debilitating to our communities. So when we're talking about menstrual equity, that's more about providing it in spaces like buildings, schools, recreational centers or whatever, just like toilet paper and paper towels and stuff, and making it equitable or giving it to people to give it to them for a moment. But again, unless you address period poverty, then that's a whole different level. And I think that that's one of our main messages, because one of the things that No More Secrets realizes is that we can't call other organizations, like when we can't get somewhere, it's no one else out there giving this amount of supplies to deal with period poverty. And the reason I'm saying that is that because people are pushing bills, and they're menstrual equity bills. They're not period poverty bills. And the reason I need to keep saying it is because even if you push menstrual equity, like when COVID hit,
COVID was a big way to show the difference between period.
All the buildings shut down, everywhere shut down. So what happened? We were out with scarves on our face, giving out supplies to our communities. So I think that's one of the things, is that we want education and awareness. What are the different stages? What's the difference between menstrual equity and period poverty? And when we're talking about BIPOC populations, which is our hashtag Black Girls Bleed. And why do we start it? Because of systemic racism within Black communities, within the menstrual space, and against us as a Black organization serving Black bodies. So we wanted to basically call out brands that basically will not donate to us because we're a Black organization serving Black bodies, and to movements who would not support us because we're a Black organization serving Black bodies. So I think one of the major things that needs to change within the menstrual space is to really incorporate Black organizations who are in touch with the voices and experiences, and stop highlighting this scenario that you're putting out that's not the realistic experiences of our communities.
Or this idea of mentality about how it's beautiful and stuff, when that's not our reality.
That's not the reality of people who are suffering. Yes. And I think it degrades them, and you basically create this narrative that's not who they are. So then it basically forces them further and further down to these depressive episodes, thinking that something is wrong with them. So I think that's our message to people. If you're going to educate, advocate, and donate or do whatever you need to be intentional about meeting the needs of the community and not meeting your little performative activism checkpoint for that day.
And talk about both the positive and negative.
Yes, normal periods versus abnormal periods. access versus non-access.
Yes.
I want to thank you for bringing up the language differences. Plenty of people interchange menstrual injustice, menstrual justice, menstrual equity, menstrual inequity, period poverty a lot. And even I have been known to do that. I believe that operating through a reproductive justice framework is best when utilizing community organizing and understanding that period poverty is more than just product access and affordability. So much more than that. As Dr. Heather mentioned earlier, it's also about birth control. It's about understanding abnormal and normal periods, like you've stated. It's more than just the bare minimum of, let me give you a few products and not understand the long-term effects of that. You need more of a sustainable movement in ensuring and eventually eradicating period poverty within our country. Naya, this one's specifically for you. I know that we've been dominating the conversation a lot, but what do you believe youth activists play in the role that we play in fighting against period poverty and building a more diverse movement that's centering marginalized communities, and how can youth activists or youth organizers, or beginning to be youth activists, take that first step into entering the space?
First of all, youth activists have a major tool on their hand. It's called social media. Utilize social media. Use that as a way to get to people who may not even know about the issue. And besides just posting pictures and getting likes or using it as a highlight platform, take action. It's cute to post cute little animations and stuff, but understand your language, understand your targeted audience, and be honest. And then after you do that, take action. It's easy to just post something and get a bunch of likes and faves. Activism is not about favoritism. It's about seeing a need that's in the community and taking action and going about doing the best work you do to help this community. That's what I have to say.
Oh, take action. Go ahead, Naya. So what ways can they take action, Naya? What ways can they take action? Like doing some deliveries?
Of course, deliveries. Or even when you start menstrual drives or something like that. Give them donations to organizations that are actually on the ground, in touch with the communities. Hey, it's good. I'm not saying you can't give it to shelters. That's great and all. But what about these other people who are like living right next to people who needs a supply? They're like in the ground, they're on the ground, they're there, they're in touch with people. Like, give donations enough.
You said do the work, take action.
Do the work, take action, do the work. If you see it, do it.
Not just a post-like community,
yes,
right? Post-like and get out and do something.
And get to know your community too.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of people reside in communities and don't know the issues that they're being surrounded with. They don't know what their next door neighbor is going through, what the kid down the street is going through, what the people in their schools are even going through. Yeah. And being able to listen more and be more attentive to what their community needs.
Definitely. I want to say one thing. I'm sorry. So I did want to say, she probably forgot. So even for, what is it? Martin Luther King Day of Service. So her idea was, I had to say this because I know she always cuts me off. So when you're talking about young people, you know how people always, paint bathrooms and do whatever, whole nother conversation. I'm not going to bring that here. But Naya was like, even if you're uncomfortable about everything around period poverty or activism, she has started our Menstrualized the bathroom. She told people whatever so you don't even have to go far. Like if you're in a building, if you're in your school, menstrualize one bathroom, and that was just put menstrual products in that one bathroom. Just start normalizing it. Hey, no more sneaky under the sink and stuff. She just said,
if you can walk around with toilet paper, you can walk around with tampon. This is a natural, normal thing. Normalize it. And for us as Black young ladies and Black bodies, this is a normal thing. It should not be stigmatized. It's normal. It's natural. Normal, natural.
Yep. So that's what we did. We menstrualized bathrooms in and we did it even in our office, and people kept putting them under the thing, and we kept putting it up. So now they're out there and everybody knows. So that's just something simple anybody can do. Get a couple of supplies in any bathroom that you occupy or go to. So it's not taking you out of your budget, but then people, because we all need them when we walk in different bathrooms. So this way you can have them. So that's nice thing. Nope, menstrualize it. Oh, okay, I'm gonna shut up now.
I love that hashtag menstrualize it.
Yes.
I think you just started a new hashtag right there.
I know. Black girls bleed and menstrualize it, right? We always start so.
So before I go into another question, are there any questions that you guys have about me, about period as a whole, and what we do and how we can transition from menstrual equity to fully addressing period poverty in that sense, considering marginalized communities?
I guess, what are your plans to do, like to move towards more of a focus on period poverty?
Mm-hmm. So we are starting a microgrant program. We just finished the first pilot. No More Secrets knows a little bit about that, where we're focusing more on community organizing and assisting more community organizations and specifically more youth activists in organizing around period poverty. There's going to be also a greater language change in understanding the difference between menstrual equity and period poverty and getting education around that. And it's a lot more long-term change that needs to happen, but all of us are willing to do the work. We're very excited about switching up things into a new direction.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome results.
I think change is good. I think what happens is, as I always say, this transformation or metamorphosis. You know, you start one way, and as you listen to your community, you listen to the activists, you listen to, you know, even government, you start changing to, you know, basically meet the needs more so. Because sometimes when we start organizations, it's like, I have this idea what everybody needs. But I think great organizations are ones that say, okay, I'm going to shift based on the community's needs and not based on what I think they need. So I think that's great.
We've also, because I sit on the council, started the National Youth Advisory Council, which our executive director, Michaela, is super excited about, and making sure that period as a whole is considering more youth voices and more voices from marginalized communities and different backgrounds to show that menstruation isn't just the face of a cisgender white woman. It's to diversify the movement and to emphasize that there's not one face of menstruation, and to make sure that all voices are being heard and advocated for.
I love it. Love it.
So with that being said, if there is one call to action that you can give to our viewers, what would you like for them to take in bettering their community to take one further step to eradicating period poverty?
Okay, I guess I'll start. So my one call to action is really, I think everyone's been saying it, but it's like a call to action plus. So I would say that everyone should go out there and vote, right? And if you can't vote, then because you're too young, or you have felonies, stuff like that, because there are people who have those issues, anybody around you that can vote needs to vote. And it's not necessarily for president or Senate or any of those things. What people don't realize is that there are lots of down ballot issues that can affect your life extensively, including like all these period tax votes that have been on the ballots and things like that. It is very important for you to vote and to look at the issues and really know what types of things will affect your community. Funding and money that goes to establishments like your hospitals and your bridges, your tunnels. These are the things that get period products there, or that get the doctors there to help you out. So it's really important to not just vote for, president, your senator, your representative, but look at what propositions are on the ballots and really look at them and see how they're going to affect your community, because a lot of those things have a lot more power in some respects to your day-to-day life than some of the like bigger issues like the president. So that's my big call to action.
So I guess our call to action would also be our hashtag Black Girls Bleed. really asking people to decrease the stigmas and the silence in communities around this horrendous epidemic. And also, my call to action is I'm, ask, I'm asking for you to hold people accountable. I want you to hold brands accountable. I want you to hold movements accountable. If brands say they're giving to communities of color and businesses of color, ask them to start putting it out as to who they're giving it to and where is it going. Because people are hiding behind this idea of we're giving to Black communities. Like any of us, we have to basically show what we're doing. So right now, my call to action is start holding people accountable. Don't let people just post and do lip service, because what it does is it's a disjustice again to organizations or communities that really need it, because I don't know where they're going half the time. So maybe you can help us hold people accountable, especially again, like you said, for the BIPOC populations. People are saying they're doing all this diversity and inclusion, because when we send emails, they're saying that's where they're going, but please hold people accountable. Where is it going? When we give you donations, how much is going to the populations? When we reach out to brands, exactly what populations, what states, what organizations, and where is it going? And what does it look like? So that's what I'm asking people to do. Accountability, because at the end of the day, our communities are suffering. I mean, me and Naya get over 200 requests a day. We do 200 plus deliveries a week, and we ship nationwide. That's ridiculous that we're fighting this hard against something that's normal and natural. Also, ask your politicians to add it to public assistance benefits. If we can at least do that, we can at least help these populations reach their full potential. At least some of them couldn't even get a COVID test. Some people couldn't get in lines for food drives. We got food lines, and we never thought that they couldn't get the COVID because they were bleeding. So please, these are the realities. So that's what I'm just asking: educate and make it aware that period poverty is an issue in our communities, and it's growing as more communities are losing their jobs during this pandemic. That's it.
And there you have it. Thank you guys so much for holding space for this conversation of addressing language changes from menstrual equity to period poverty, of understanding that period poverty is just more than lack of access and affordability for products, of centering marginalized voices as Black women, of sharing more about your stories and the work that you do in your communities, and for your patients. This has been a lovely conversation, so I just want to thank you again, and I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your night.